This is the Academy of Gaming, and we're here to dissect the past to explain why modern gaming is the absolute quagmire of worthless trash it is today. We live in an era defined by a lack of imagination and passion. A landscape of boring, homogenized design that offers the same licensed crossovers and seasonal battle passes that have become so ubiquitous that you're left wondering where Fortnite ends and Call of Duty begins. It wasn't always this way. Developers once had passion for their craft. A desire to make something that was a game first and a service, well, never. They crafted games around mechanics that were risky, wild, and innovative. They weren't gimmicks. They were statements, bold and loud, claiming new ground in a landscape that still felt alive and ripe with possibility. Now this became slightly discarded, thrown to the wayside in favor of recurrent user spending and live service treadmills. They're scared of putting out player first instead of the shareholder. But these are the games that took risks to open our eyes to the possibilities of what gaming could be. First up, we have Zone of the Enders 2: The Second Runner, the 2003 masterpiece from Hideo Kojima and Shuyo Murata. Mech games are a dying art form. For every Armored Core 6, there's a graveyard of Titanfalls and Mecha Breaks, and none of them came close to what Zone of the Enders 2 offered. The tagline was high-speed robot combat, and they meant every word. Missile barrages that fulfilled your Macross fantasies. Beam cannons that blew charred, smoking holes through capital ships. Humming lasers and teleportation. It was mecha combat on a scale we'd never seen before, bringing the anime fantasy to life in a way that hasn't been repeated since. It worked because it had no limits, no restraints. Nothing was off the table. It looked at the classic Japanese anime that it drew inspiration from and dialed the intensity up to 11, moving from set piece to set piece without letting the player get a chance to breathe. It pushed the PS2 heart rate to its limits, including battles on a scale that no one could believe possible. Massive, grand aerial battles featuring gigantic orbital frames. Ground warfare with hundreds of combatants at once clashing in a head-on bloodbath. And every time it circled back to that promise of high-speed combat. No breaks, no breath. Dash, dodge, clash, teleport, return fire. There was no button mashing. The game punished you for failing to react and learn. It showed no quarter when you couldn't keep up, even on the standard difficulty. It dared to declare that exhilaration and speed came at a cost, and it knew that the payoff was worth it. You won't see that now for one very simple reason. It's a structured, bespoke, and highly linear experience. There's no open world to explore. No quests or gear to grind. Upgrades are earned when the plot knows the pacing is right, not because you rolled on a loot table. Once the game is over, it's over. Good things aren't good because they lost. Kojima and Murata knew that. Next game in the lesson plan is Asura's Wrath, the 7th generation brawler from CyberConnect 2. This time, we're not talking about a single idea or mechanic. We're talking about philosophy. Zone of the Enders walked so that Asura's Wrath could run. It took the groundwork laid by Zone of the Enders with its dream of bringing anime to gaming, and embraced it wholly and solely right down to the marrow. This wasn't a game with anime aspirations. It was anime. Every chapter was a new episode. Title cards, story recaps, bookends for commercials. It was all here. Spectacle and scale that were the backbone of a story whose pure, untainted rage could dwarf Doomguy or Kratos like holding a candle against the molten heart of the sun. It was a feast for the eyes, a gateway to catharsis, a power fantasy on a scale never seen before in gaming, with quick-time events and cinematic cameras taken to their logical, theoretical limit. Set pieces of a planetary scale, with a de jure for a story that dared to be so grand in scope, so colossal in ambition, that nothing since its release would dare to attempt it again. I don't need to tell you why we've never seen something like it since. It failed. Spectacularly. Like Icarus, it dared to fly too close to the sun, with a reach that truly exceeded its grasp. Well, that and the fact that it hid the true ending behind paywall DLC probably didn't inspire gamers to sing its praises. It arrived at a time where QTEs were being driven out of gaming, not sewn to the very fabric of a title's DNA. It was painfully inflexible. A story so tied to its rails that it made a roller coaster ride look like a cruise ship on the open sea. There's no player agency, no customization or exploration. Asura's Wrath dared to tell the player exactly what they wanted, and challenged them to hold on for the ride. Then lastly, there's the poster child for the death of originality. Mirror's Edge, the 2008 parkour simulator that sought to embrace the bold, the original, to do things that had never been dared to even be contemplated in gaming before. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't ease the player into its world. It was an artwork where the creators simply made their statement and demanded that the world appreciate the beauty of what they'd done. Striking visual design, an iconic soundtrack, a world that begged the player to drink in both its corruption and its beauty, and movement mechanics that still haven't been repeated to this day. Well, except they have. 8 years later, it got a sequel. An update that brought the story, design philosophy, and aesthetic into the next decade. And if you're wondering why I'm including this on a list of games that developers are afraid to copy when it literally copies the game that came before it, well, it's because it just proves my point. Mirror's Edge bombed in sales. Catalyst bombed harder. This is a situation where EA gave DICE a chance to prove why they should be allowed to take a risk on reviving a classic, and all they got was an even harder lesson in why they should never do it again. Sometimes we truly do build the walls that cage us, don't we? And that's all we have time for today. We've seen how these retro games took swings that modern devs wouldn't dream of, because they were too scared of risk, of failure, or offending the masses. Gaming's all the poorer for it. Which mechanic do you miss the most? Comment below or challenge my assertions. Change my mind. The Academy is for the bold, the passionate, and the fearless.